Beloved, welcome to another episode of our Connubial Paradise broadcast, a marriage and relationship program that seeks to bring the wisdom of God to you on how to live a successful married life. This program equally makes information available to singles on how to live a successful single life while waiting for a marriage proposal. On today's broadcast, we are going to continue with how to create an atmosphere of connubial paradise, part 4. How to create an atmosphere of connubial paradise, part 4. God, in His infinite wisdom, has created the male gender differently from the female gender. So when people get married and they are living together as a couple, they must not want the other person to be identical to the other spouse. God will create both spouses differently, give them different experiences, different upbringing, different personalities, different interests. When these things are not properly harnessed, they can become sources of potential trouble in the family. So understanding the personality of your spouse, understanding the differences that exist between you and your spouse will help you to know that God made that intentionally so that together you people can become a team and you can complement one another. So today we shall look at some potential differences that exist between the male and the female gender so that we learn how to harness our strength and not allow the strength to become sources of problems in our marriages. I remember vividly about 25 years ago, I had an encounter with the Lord. I was walking and the Lord just drew my heart in what I'll term a protracted conversation. The Lord said to me, "Son, I accuse you of witchcraft." And I laughed and I said, "God, you are kidding." And He said to me, "Son, I'm not kidding. I accuse you of witchcraft." So my fancy was tickled and I said, "Lord, how do you mean?" He said, "You want to change my creation. You want my daughter to behave exactly like you. Why didn't you marry a man then? Why did you have to marry her?" I said, "Lord, forgive me. I'm sorry." The Lord said, "That is why I engage you in this conversation, so that I can bring it to your notice and cause you to repent, so that you would enjoy marital bliss in your home." Before this encounter, I wanted my wife to be like me, to have my kind of aggressive faith, to pray like I do 3 hours in a night at a time in tongues, and to do so many other things exactly like I was doing them at the time. Ladies and gentlemen, I discovered that I was dragging my wife too hardly, and she was not mature to be able to match up with my expectations of her. So the Lord was right. I was trying for my wife to behave the way I was behaving, to behave like a man, and to desist from behaving like a woman. So when the Lord encountered me and instructed me, He said to me, "Learn to study her, learn who she is, and accept her exactly as I've presented her to you. Every difference that she has is a plus to your union. If she's exactly like you, then you don't need her. You need somebody who's totally different from you so that the person can complement you in everything that you do and add to your union." He said to me, "That is why she's called a helpmeet, which is to say, I am not complete in myself. I need somebody from God who will come and complement me so that I'll be able to fulfill the purpose for which God has created me and brought us together as a married couple." That greatly, greatly blessed my life, and I was happy that it came at the early stage of my marriage. So I quickly corrected that, and together with my wife to this day, we are having a blissful marriage. Why is it important that we understand the personality of our spouses and their interests? Here is why. For improved communication. Recognizing your partner's personality and interest will help you tailor your communication style to their needs. If you don't understand how your wife speaks, how your husband speaks, then you may not be able to tailor your communication style to meet her needs. Once you understand that somebody, for example, is pro-choleric, The tendency is that the person will speak fast and shout. It is true that there are some calm cholerics, but the general tendency with choleric people is that they express themselves freely. So when your spouse is expressing himself or herself freely to you, if you knew her personality type, then you wouldn't say, why are you shouting at me? You would know that that is who she is. For example, my wife is a combination of all the temperaments you can name. However, the choleric temperament stands out, and we tend to describe her by that. So my wife expresses herself with energy. Even when we are two in the room and we are chatting and discussing, at the time she'll get up and she'll be speaking and be shouting unconsciously. Then I'll whisper to her, honey, we are just two in the house. I'm hearing you perfectly. Oh, she'll say, oh, honey, this is how I express myself. Then we would laugh and I'll allow her to express herself accordingly. So, understanding the personality type of your spouse and her interests will help you to tailor your communication style to meet her needs. Why is understanding the personality and interests of your spouse important? Two, it is important for conflict resolution. It is important for conflict resolution. Understanding the personality of your spouse will help navigate conflicts more effectively. In the first 20 years of my marriage, one of the things I discovered was that my wife could hardly say, I'm sorry, please forgive me for what I did. Actually, within the first 20 years, she apologized about 10 times. There were so few that I could memorize them and keep them in my head. On some occasions, I had to apologize for things that I thought my wife did wrong in order to maintain the spirit of the home as the head of the family. But for the past 5 years, she has become so apologetic. So, tendering an apology to a spouse is very important for conflict resolution. Once you know that, okay, this is the personality of my spouse, she cannot render apology easily. I must not want to force that out of her life. So I'll accept the times she renders apology. If she does not even render an apology and I need to diffuse the tension that may be building in the family, then I will apologize on her behalf and have that sorted out. So understanding the personality of your spouse will help you to know how to resolve potential conflicts in the family. This is important because understand the personality of your spouse will help couples to eliminate frequent misunderstanding and better conflict prevention. If you know that your spouse does not like to be shouted upon, then that will help you to know how to communicate to her. Even when the person does something wrong that you want to bring correction to it, you will know how to approach the person. You will know the tone of your conversation, and that will help to prevent the escalation of the little problem that may have happened in the house. The third reason why it is important for a married couple to understand the personality of their spouses and their interests is that it enables couples to know who their spouses are and what to expect in the marriage relationship. Many people enter into marriage with a lot of expectations, and some of the expectations are unfounded. Why? They never spend time to understand the other person. If you have expectations about the other person that the other person can never deliver, then you may end up having potential trouble in your home because of wrong expectations. But once you understand your spouse, you know the personality of the spouse, you know the interests of the spouse, then you can have expectations that the spouse will be able to meet up. Just like we preface our discussion for today, that the male gender has been created differently by God and the female gender has been created differently by God. And also, given that both husband and wife may have grown from different backgrounds with different experiences in life, when such people come together as a married couple, they have a different personality type and they will have different interests. So these things can become potential problems in their union. However, if they learn to understand what we are sharing in this podcast, then they'll be able to harness those differences and pull them as potential strength to drive their marriage union forward. So understanding your spouse will enable you to know the expectations that you have of the person, which is to say, you will know what the person can do and what the person cannot do, so that you base your expectations on what the person has ability for, so that you won't be disappointed in your marriage relationship. In addition, understanding the personality and interests of couples will help to maximize their strength and to deal with their weaknesses. This will promote complementary roles in a marriage reunion and enhance teamwork, and it will lead to growth and development in the marriage relationship, where the differences will be seen as sources of strength, and when they're pulled together, they'll be able to drive the marriage relationship forward and in success. Furthermore, understanding the personality and interests of your spouse will help you to perceive the weaknesses of your spouse as opportunities to build capacity in those areas and accommodate your spouse. A while back, I said that the dominant personality trait in my wife is that of the choleric. And the choleric trait has some weaknesses. But ladies and gentlemen, to me, these weaknesses have become opportunities for me to build capacity so that I accommodate my wife effectively. The fact that they can talk fast, the fact that they can shout, all of those things have built humility in me, built patience in me to always listen to my wife until she finishes. And it has made me to see shouting not as an abuse, but as a way my wife expresses herself. So these weaknesses have helped me to develop spiritually. They have helped in exercising me in love, in peace, in humility, in patience, in joy, in self-control, in temperance, in tolerance, and this continues. Without my spouse, I would not have been able, perhaps, to build capacity in these areas. So my spouse is there like a sparring mate. Whenever she begins praying,